Hey, what's going on, peeps? This Ashen Clips back with another Rocket Ball Car League video. Yeah, I just made that up. But anyway, guys, this video is actually going to be me going into depth on the various different settings in Rocket League, camera and control-wise, going over what I use and why I use it, and all that good stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video and find it informative and helpful. If you do, remember to poke that like button. But I'm going to go ahead and get into it for you guys. So camera preset, you got your default, your balanced, your wide angle, and then your custom. To be completely honest, I don't really see what the use would be for using a camera preset. Maybe if you set it to like balanced or wide angle or something and then customized it from there, it would save a little bit of time and be a little bit convenient. But for me, I've always just done all my stuff manually, especially since I started playing far before they even had camera presets. So camera shake you're gonna want to turn off because it's incredibly distracting. And if you have any kind of motion sickness, it's going to be an awful time. There's going to be firing lasers, vomit everywhere all the time. So, yeah, just do yourself a favor and just turn it off and keep it off forever. To be totally honest, I don't even know why there's a camera shake setting in the game, but that's just me. Field of view, obviously, is exactly what it sounds. If it affects your field of view, affects how much of the field you can see, and well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Also, increasing field of view will or may reduce motion sickness if you actually do have motion sickness. So. For me, I keep it at 110. I've never found any use for having it below 110 just because for me personally, when I've turned it down below 110, just the camera seems to be a little bit more sluggish for some reason. I know the norm is usually between 105 and 110. So just keep that in mind when you guys are playing around with your camera settings. The distance is how close or far behind the camera is to the back of your car. I have a pretty close distance personally, just because for me I find it more beneficial um, to have a better view on my car compared to having a better view of the field, just because a better view of your car I feel is much more important, because then you can see how you're utilizing your car to hit the ball, how the ball is going to react to hitting certain parts of the hitbox of your car, and things of that nature. So I prefer a closer distance. I believe the norm is between 200 and 250 for distance. I know there's some people out there who actually have their distance at like 300, which I have no idea how they manage to tell when or how they're going to hit the ball, but you know, whatever floats their boat. Everybody's different when it comes to settings and just overall preferences in gaming. So, with the height, I have mine set relatively low. The height obviously has to do with how low or high the camera is. Well, like the tooltip says, controls how high your camera is positioned above your car. So I prefer a lower height just because from what I've experienced personally, once you start getting into the higher ranks and you start playing at a higher level in general, the ball is more than likely going to be in the air a lot more often. than it was, like, say, back when you first started playing or whatever. The ball was hardly ever in the air, so I found with a lower camera height, it's easier for me to see the ball when it's above my car. The camera just seems to be more snappy and responsive at showing me where exactly the ball is when I have ball cam on. So, and then the same thing with the angle. The angle is how parallel the camera is to the ground, or how much of an angle it is toward the ground. I opt for more parallel setting at -3, just because it correlates really well with my camera height and allowing me to see the ball when it's airborne far easier. I've found that having a sharper angle toward the ground rather than a more parallel one has actually been pretty detrimental, because the camera either has a really hard time showing you where the ball is if it's airborne, especially if it's near the roof, or it just can't show you the ball at all, which is obviously a problem. You can't exactly hit the ball if you can't see it because of your camera settings. So that's why my angle's at where it is. I think the norm for angle is let's see. I think it's between -2 and -5 for angle, is I think what most people use. And then for height, since I didn't mention it, the norm is usually between, I would say, 80 and 120. And then stiffness, that controls the rigidity of your camera and just how it follows the car in general. Obviously, if you have max stiffness, the camera is just going to stick to your car like Gorilla Glue, pretty much. It's not going to go anywhere, even if you go supersonic. For a while, I did play at max stiffness just because I don't know. I think the reason I played at max stiffness for a while was because it reduced how much I got distracted by the camera moving whenever I would go supersonic. However, the more hours I put into the game, I've actually found that having a stiffness that is close to max but not quite is actually the most beneficial, because your camera still doesn't move around a whole lot, so you can still focus on what you're doing. However, it does move just enough to give you a little bit more depth. So when I go supersonic now, I can tell just by how the camera moves rather than having to either listen for the noise for when I go supersonic or staring at my car. So comes in handy to just have a little bit less than max stiffness for me. For stiffness, I don't know. I think the norm is like 0.80 to 1.00. And all this, keep in mind, guys, sorry, I'm kind of itchy, but keep in mind, guys, this is all personal preference. I'm just showing you guys what my camera settings are, just in case you were curious and wanted to try it out, or, you know, whatever you guys want to do. Also figured that just going through these settings in depth in general would help you guys out with figuring out what kind of camera settings and control settings you should have. So the swivel speed just controls how fast the camera swivels when you have ball cam on. Like if the ball happens to move to your side or behind you, the camera will be very snappy and follow the ball very closely. Obviously, a lower swivel speed will reduce that snappiness, and the camera will be a little bit sluggish when the ball's moving around the field when you have ball cam on. So, for as long as I can remember, I've had my swivel speed maxed out at 10. I believe the norm for swivel speed is between like 8 and 10. So it's just another one of those preference things where you guys will just have to play around with a lot of the stuff and figure out what's comfortable for you. I've put tons of hours personally into customizing my settings to my liking. So, and then lastly, the transition speed, which is how fast the camera switches from ball cam to free cam. I found that between 1.10 and 1.20 is usually the most comfortable for me personally. Anything higher than 1.20 seems to cause the camera to get a little spastic. It doesn't seem to be nearly as fluent and smooth, so rather than just having it at 1, which I believe is the default, I tend to have it at like 110, just so I get that little bit of extra camera movement speed when I'm toggling ball cam, while still allowing the camera movement itself to be smooth. And then invert swivel just means it inverts the camera swivel controls. I'm actually not 100% sure on what this is supposed to do, but I've had it off for forever. So, actually, I'll go ahead and go into training and see what the heck this is supposed to do. Let's see here, invert swivel. So what? Whoops, what is that? I'm actually not sure what invert swivel is supposed to do. Let's try turning it off. Lol, what a shot. Oh, I wonder if it has to do with the right stick. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, that's what it is. The inverse swivel actually just affects your right stick. So to look up, you actually push down on the stick, and then to look down, you push up on the stick instead of the other way around. Okay, that makes sense. So that's why, that's why I keep that off. Just because, yeah, having it inverted is just confusing. Not that I use the right stick to look around very often, but yeah. And then for controls, controlling dead zone, the norm is usually between 0.05 and 0.03, or 0.05 and 0.10. I have mine at 0.03 just because it's the lowest figure I can get comfortably without my camera getting constant jitters. And if you don't know what I mean by constant jitters, I'll set it to 0.00 and let you guys see what happens after I move the right stick. See, the camera shakes. That's because the right stick can't compensate for how low I have my dead zone. So the lowest figure that I've been able to get without that happening is 0.03, which makes my car quite snappy on the ground as well as in the air, without the negative drawback of my camera constantly shaking around. So for controller dead zone, I would say the lower you can get it and be comfortable with it, the better. but if you want to set your controller dead zone higher and then set your sensitivities lower, that's always an option. For me, I just keep my controller dead zone as low as I can, just for quality of life reasons. The dodge dead zone I have at 0.23. I believe the norm is, I think the norm is between 0.25 and 0.50. So this is another personal preference thing. I have my dodge dead zone as low as I can, just because it makes my flips more snappy and responsive. Obviously, if you set your dodge dead zone really low and you're flipping a lot on accident when you're trying to adjust yourself in the air, then you want to raise it. I've adjusted my dodge dead zone a lot just out of trial and error. So it's whatever you're comfortable with personally. But with same thing with controller dead zone, the lower you can have it comfortably, the better. Because it'll just make your gameplay that much quicker. And obviously, in a fast-paced competitive game like good old car ball here, I almost said call ball. Best commentator ever. No. the the quicker you can execute your plays and move your car around the field, the better. And every millisecond counts in a fast-paced competitive game. So the steering sensitivity controls how fast your car turns and handbrakes. Actually, I don't think it has anything to do with the handbrake, but it does affect your steering on the ground. Obviously, you want this as high as possible, as high as you can possibly be comfortable with, because obviously on the ground you want to be able to move your car as fast as you can in order to reposition yourself to go up for aerials or make a save or whatever the scenario puts you in that you need to move your car. So I have this at 9.30 personally. I don't know what the norm is for this. I'm not sure what kind of range people usually set this at, but I have mine at 9.30 personally, just because, like I said, the faster you can move your car on the ground, the better. And then aerial sensitivity is the same thing as steering sensitivity, just controls how fast your car moves in the air. I have mine relatively low at 2.70. I've been more or less gradually reducing this over trial and error, just as I've figured out what I'm comfortable with and all that good stuff. Generally, a lower aerial sensitivity is going to be helpful because you want to have that precise finesse when you're moving your car in the air. You don't want it super spastic because if you're trying to do very controlled mechanics like air drags or something like that, you're going to want to have more control, not less control. So I have my aerial sensitivity pretty low. With this, I don't know what people's normal range is either. I know there's some people who have just left all of this on default. So this is another personal preference thing that I encourage guys to just mess around and play with until you get it to where you like it personally. And then, yeah, I think that's actually pretty much it, I believe. So, yeah. Oh, ball camera mode. I have this on toggle. You should pretty much have it on toggle, period. Because um, unless you're like Cooksier and you have gigantic hands, trying to hold a button for ball cam while you're trying to do other things like aerial and handbrake and adjust yourself is going to be a gigantic pain in the butt. It's going to be awful. It's not going to be a good time. You're going to want to mash your face into your controller out of frustration. No, no, that's literally pretty much how bad it is, though. Trying to hold ball cam while just doing the basics of the game is awful. So, should definitely have this on toggle, no matter what. And then I will go over my bindings real quick. I do not use default bindings. For my jump, it is I'm using DS4 for my PS4 controller, so it's going to be showing Xbox buttons. I'm actually using a PS4 controller just because it's most comfortable for me. I started using a PlayStation controller way before I ever touched an Xbox controller, so I just have more muscle memory using a PlayStation controller than I do an Xbox one. So my jump is default, which is X. My boost is actually on my R1. My power slide is on my L1. Let's see. My arrow right is on triangle, and my arrow left is on circle. And then just my air roll in general is also on L1. So I have power slide and air roll on the same button, which is actually very helpful. Because it actually frees up a button for you to bind to something else. If you guys are wondering why I have air roll right and air roll left on triangle and circle, it's because this actually makes it far easier to do half flips. Because all you have to do is flip backwards and then hold either triangle or circle, and then hold your left stick up. It makes it far easier than some other methods I've heard of, like binding your left stick to where if you push it down, it causes you to air roll a certain direction. It can be really hard to push down on the left stick and hold it up at the same time, so this is just what I like to use personally. Doody-doo. Oh, my toggle ball cam button is square, which I believe is also default. And then my rear view is actually my share button. I can think of what it was called. And then my scoreboard is just pushing down on the left stick, and I believe that's pretty much it. I think pretty much all my other settings are default. My accelerate and brake, yeah. So drive forward is still default, which is my R2 or right trigger, and then my backwards is L2 or left trigger, or left trigger or L2. So yeah, now you guys know what kind of bindings I use. If you guys want to play around with those, maybe use the bindings that I use just for shits and giggles to see if it's comfortable for you or not. So yeah, if you guys are curious what I stumbled on to convince me to change my bindings, it was actually a video made by I don't think it was Mason RL. I think it was LocoNate, actually. I think LocoNate made a video on key bindings, and I found this video interesting. He made great points on uh, the pros of switching the bindings to what I have them set to. So I just went ahead and went with it, and it's been far more comfortable for me than ever before, especially compared to just the bone dry stock key bindings, which um, I know Kernovi. I think Kernovi pretty much uses stock key bindings, but to get the control he needs, he has to use a claw grip with his right hand so that he can hit all the necessary buttons he needs to um, change the direction of his car in the air and on the ground and all that good stuff. And it works for him. I know he's always played claw grip ever since he started Rocket League back in the super acrobatic rocket powered battle cars days, way back in the day, before probably most of us even knew what a Rocket League was. um, but he's always played with claw, and like I said, it's just another one of those personal preference things. It's what he's comfortable with. However, the problem with him using claw, I feel, is going to become more apparent over time, which is it's really going to negatively affect his joints. It's going to have a big impact on his joints in general. And if he has ever played a decent amount of hours continuously using claw, I would be surprised if he said that he hasn't had hand pains afterwards, or at least some sort of hand stiffness in general, because it's not a natural position for your hand to be in, period, let alone for long periods of time. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. And I'm sure there's probably been other people that have been concerned about his health as far as his hand joints go. I don't imagine they want him getting arthritis or carpal tunnel at a super young age, because that sucks, and it can hurt a lot and be super uncomfortable. So, but yeah, I think that'll do it for this settings video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found it thought-provoking and just interesting window to how you guys can change things to possibly improve your gameplay a little bit. But yeah, that was the whole reason of this video, was just for it to be informative for you guys, just so you could, try out different things and see if it actually helps you out. So yeah, that'll do it for me for this video, guys. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, feel free to poke the like button, share the video, sub if you're new. Follow me on the Twitters, because I do Twitter stuffs sometimes. I'm mostly just a derp on Twitter, because, yeah, that more or less seems to be what it's for, aside from actually giving updates, which I use it for. I do use Twitter to put out updates on what my next video is going to be, when I'm going to do it, and things like that. So, and last but not least, feel free to poke the notification bell. That way you will get notifications to whatever your set email is. That'll be like, hey, Ashton guys uploaded a new video again. And then you can go come watch the video and then do all the stuffs and have a good time. So, yeah, hope you guys had a good week. Hope you guys have a good weekend as well. I'm sure you guys are certainly planning on it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Later.